And we're live! Welcome to
Startup TNT.
Today, we're diving into a story about turning local happy hours into startup funding powerhouses. This episode is sponsored by M&P, a national firm focused on accounting, consulting, tax, and digital services in more than 160 communities across Canada. Their advisors deliver personalized strategies and made-in-Canada solutions to help businesses of all sizes reach their full potential. Welcome to this episode of Dare to be Different. We are your hosts, Chris Young
and Lynette Tremblay. And today we're diving into a story that started with a simple happy hour in an empty bar. No microphone, no fancy chairs, just a group of people gathering over a few pitchers of beer. Somehow that ragtag get-together sparked a whole new way for entrepreneurs to launch their big ideas here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
We sat down with the founders, Tim and Zack, who came from totally different worlds. Tim nearly became an engineer, then ended up living in nursing homes while working on diaper sensors. Meanwhile, Zack has a PhD in chemical engineering and a passion for bringing people together. Neither of them planned to build a startup community, but fate, and maybe a shared love of happy hour hangouts, had other ideas.
In just a few short years, what started as a tiny meetup evolved into Startup TNT, a movement that's raised millions for local startups. Tim and Zack found a way to make angel investing accessible, not just for the old boys club, but for anyone who wants to see their community thrive. Definitely a dare to be different mindset in making financing and capital raising that's fun, freewheeling, and genuinely inclusive. Here's Tim, the co-founder of Startup TNT, sharing how it all began for him and how he got into the startup space.
I didn't think that I was going to go into entrepreneurship at all, so I didn't really know what I was getting into in finance. Did a brief stint in investment banking and then over-rotated and joined my buddy's startup and lived in nursing homes for about a year before we sold it, building diaper sensors for seniors' homes.
Sorry, did you say lived in nursing homes?
Yeah, like on air mattresses in the corner of nursing homes for free, just like slumming it and doing like the pure startup grind. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, but it worked for us. I wouldn't do it again. But yeah, no, my grandfather was super entrepreneurial, had a trucking business and some concrete business and stuff like that, and grew up hearing his stories. But for whatever reason, I never put the pieces together that I should do the same thing. Like the normal path is like grow up and get a good job. And so that was the angle. And then I just sort of accidentally fell into this startup thing because my buddy was like, hey, can you help me with this pitch deck and this financial model so I can win this competition? And that was great. And then he was like, yeah, you want to come live with me and like make no money for a while? Like, yeah, sure. Sounds like fun.
You are the fun one.
And so we did that. And then I came back and worked at Deloitte for a bit and then wanted to get back into the startup world. And so met with Arden from Accelerate Fund, who's now like one of our other sort of co-office residents here. And yeah, he introduced me to Zack and told me that Zack knows everybody in the community and I'll be able to help, I'll be able to build a startup if I go to Startup TNT. And so, yeah, it turns out Startup TNT was a startup that we built, ironically enough.
Startups upon startups upon startups.
That's right. It's pretty meta.
It's very.
We built a startup to help startup.
I love it. And then when you were at Deloitte, you started a newsletter. I think that was.
It was like I was like forwarding the Daily Oil Bulletin to people with like some commentary.
Oh.
And so they eventually got mad because it was, I think some people would forward it to other people and then I would add them to, it was just a BCC list. And so then it was like 60 people clicking on the same, like whatever HubSpot links, whatever tracking links. And they're like, this guy's clearly forwarding this to a bunch of people. And so then
also before Castle, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it was like at the same time, like in like late 2019, as we were working on TNT, they were like, you can't do this. This is you can't. This isn't good for anybody. But yeah, no, it was. I actually came.
That's actually how we met because
you were working on this newsletter, a course on how to build a newsletter.
I had written 3 newsletters and then decided to give a course on writing newsletters. So.
And it was suggested that it was going to be like a whole thing, and so.
I do that.
Yeah. And so I was expecting, like a presentation and like some chairs and like some, like a bunch of people. And I show up to Polar Park. Yeah, to his course. It was
a facilitated conversation.
That's right. So it was facilitated because the door was locked. There was nobody in the bar. The bar was under construction. This was week 7 of TNT. And the only 2 people that were there was the owner of the bar who was behind the bar pouring drinks for Zack as Zack worked on his newsletter. So I came in and was like, what's going on here? I'm here to learn about newsletters, I guess. My name's Tim. And yeah, that's really That's really how it started.
This
just
looks like a guy to
foundational.
go into business with.
Yeah.
He was dressed like he worked at Deloitte or something.
Yeah.
Well, I was expecting a whole like thing, like
Yeah, I remember you being excited. I remember being excited because you were like, "Well, yeah, I do a newsletter." I was like, "Great, let's talk about newsletters." And then he was asking basic questions about Mailchimp, and I'm like, "I don't know how to do that."
Yeah, he oversold this course. I oversold this newsletter, but here we are.
Fantastic. Okay, now let's go back in time and talk about you, Zack. And
Sure.
how did you get to the point where you was this like who you've been your whole life, or did you kind of
Actually, that's an interesting question. I kind of think launching the happy hour was kind of like reconnecting with who I was my whole life.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the U.S. I'm from Connecticut, and didn't really dream about being an entrepreneur. I was really just into like science and technology and trying to make an impact on world problems. And then I went to McGill, did a PhD at McGill in chemical engineering, and then moved to Edmonton in 2012. So I've been here 14 years and started doing research at the University of Alberta, but really wanted to focus on commercializing new technologies and then helping other entrepreneurs commercialize their technologies, and really scientist entrepreneurs back then. And then like, I didn't know much about angel investing, but I'd heard about it. And I was like, I want to get involved in angel investing somehow. And actually the way that I got involved in angel investing was Randy Thompson hosted a workshop, and he ran a local angel investing
Was it a
group
real
back
workshop?
then. It was
or
a real
it-
workshop. It was a real workshop. And I attended it, and I was like, I'm going to impress this guy, and then I'm going to join him in his angel investing network. And he was easier to impress than I realized. And he was like, "You're great. Yeah, you should come participate with us." So I got like a taste of angel investing. And then this would have been like 2014, 2015. And then I ended up doing an MBA and just wanted to build my own company at one point. But that was
What was the first pitch you saw at
that was failing
at
miserably.
Valhalla?
Yeah, actually, okay, this is a good link. The very first pitch I went to, where Randy was like, "Who the hell are you?" And I was like, "We just met last week. Don't you remember?" Who the
Clearly
heck are
impressed
Who the
by
heck
you.
are you? Yeah, the first pitch that I saw was this company called SensorSure, and they were building diapers that had sensors in them. It was Tim's company.
Yeah, Samir's company.
Sorry, it was the company you joined. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
you weren't actually the one presenting that day, but yeah, that was the very first like pitch I saw at an angel forum. And actually, I think a bunch of investors were like, "This is kind of cool. Let me sign up. Let me indicate my interest." But then no one invested, and the company ended up being quite successful. People that did invest made money, and it's actually an example of the type of thing that I saw over and over again, which is like great local founders not getting taken seriously by their local investing community, raising money either outside or not from their local community. And I was like, we should be investing in our great local founders right here in Edmonton. So the happy hour was kind of a way for me to do what I like to do, which is have fun and make friends with people on Thursday nights, but then also identify other people that want to invest and support local founders.
Well, I can tell how much fun you had in this episode, Lynette, with the amount of roasting you did with both Zack and Tim.
They just kept lobbing them up for me to spike down.
So let's talk about how these two, co-founders ended up meeting over this so-called newsletter workshop that almost didn't happen. I really just picture this half-built bar under construction, like just this ragged place where they just found the cheapest place that they could host this to put this first event together. And that's really how they met.
And so you wanted to create this network and change the way people do angel investing and get people engaged in their community. What was, and so when we now know how you've met, and it's funny because it's almost like fate, right? You've been circling each other even before the epic newsletter workshop. And so then what was that next step where you decided to get together and say, let's do something about this? We see the problem. We both want to do something.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
So it was actually that first summer, like in the months after we met, like in July, because we met in June, in July and August.
And I kept coming to every
He was
week, pretty much.
literally
It was a
there
weekly
every
happy
week.
hour.
And in the early days, there would be like 5 to 8 people.
It was intimate. It was great.
We would do fun stuff like beer tasting night or trivia night or psychedelic TNT. Anyways, we'd all kinds of fun stuff. And then we didn't know exactly what we wanted to do other than how do we get more investors investing in great local founders. And I had attended this workshop actually in Calgary where I heard about something called an Angel Summit, which is basically the concept that we now do, where it's have people chip in a relatively small amount of money from an angel perspective, $5,000, but still a sizable amount, and then work together as a group to invest in a local startup. And when I heard this pitch, I was like, this is exactly what we should be doing at Startup TNT. And I had been pitching like various concepts that were very vague to a lot of people, and they were all like, no, Zach, that's never going to work. And then I pitched it to Tim, and he was like, before I even finished, he was like, I'm in, let's do it. So that was in like August. And so that kind of like set us on using the newsletter and the happy hour to like start building momentum for our very first investment summit, where we had to recruit 25 investors, each commit $5,000, and we had to recruit 25 companies to also apply to raise money. And we were off to the races. And I think the one thing I really liked about it is that when I talked to the original organizer of the Angel Summit in Seattle, he said that there is no curriculum or game plan, just bring everyone together. So I was like, I can do that.
That I can do. I can get people in a room.
Just bring them together and they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So, and actually we still use some of the methodologies that the group figured out from that very first summit today.
Oh.
And how we organize the summits.
Yeah, so you've been doing this for 4 years, almost 5 years now. Yeah. And do you have a summit every year then?
Actually, multiple times per year. We've done 37 unique summits, 10 here in Edmonton as Edmonton summits, but every time we run a summit, we actually run multiple streams in parallel. So 37 unique streams. So we actually added Calgary the second year, or this actually in the first year.
Yeah,
so
it was in the
same
fall
year.
of 2020.
Yeah. So then we had an Edmonton and Calgary stream going hand in hand. So we had Calgary companies, Calgary investors, and then they could invest in each other's deals.
And then we added Saskatchewan the next year, and Manitoba the next year, and then BC this year.
Yep.
So yeah, and then life sciences, clean tech, ag tech, so everything sort of runs in parallel. So then all the investors work together, look at all these great companies that are local to their stream, and then at the end they pick a winner. They're like, well, company number 2, number 3, let's invest in those. Those ones are great too. But then now they have the opportunity to look out, and Edmonton folks have to look at the Calgary ones and be like, oh, well, those folks are smart. That looks like a cool company. I'll chuck a few grand at that. And same with Saskatchewan or life sciences or whatever. And so that's sort of the magic on how we've been able to work to invest a little over, I think, nearly 16 million
about 16, yep,
into over 100 companies across Western Canada.
That's incredible.
Yeah, just getting a whole bunch of people to due diligence on the local companies. So
and
it's like a decentralized venture capital company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did anything like this exist before?
The Angel Forum did. So the one that Zach was referencing in Seattle, then they sort of ported the model over to the Okanagan, and they run this thing called the Okanagan Angel Summit. But they're one-off, like same sort of model. And then at the end, but there's just the one. And so whereas the difference with us is that at the end, then there's like Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatchewan, BC, whatever, all these different ones that are happening at the same time. And we circulate it all together. Wow. And then we have a fund that co-invests into the best of the companies as well.
We also took a different approach. Like theirs is a little bit more of like a regimented program, whereas ours is really designed to be more like real life relationship building, entrepreneurs and investors trying to do deals together, and us just trying to provide some guidelines.
You know, it's on us to help the entrepreneurs, support them if they're going along the right way, and if they're not, then we should be providing them advice or asking them questions to help guide their path in a more sustainable way. And so part of it's money, part of it's guidance, part of it's just building the community and building a crew of folks that want to get things going.
Yeah, building sophistication in the community as well. So I think that's like one of the things that really appealed to me when I first learned about it, is that like you are offering sort of a training system for brand new angels, and also opportunities for people that want to be leaders in the community to play like a lead role in getting angel deals.
Just talking to Zack and Tim, you can just feel the energy that they have, and that energy that they bring not only to their business, but to each and every event. It makes what they do so fun and something that everybody wants to be part of. I know that I've attended some of their events before, and it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, now just listen how they described their first event summit.
We cut it in half. We had 20 pitches, and we were going to do it over 2 weeks. It was 2 back-to-back weeks, 10 pitches each week. I think there were 5-minute pitches each. 3 minutes each?
I think it was 3 minutes each.
It was a long pitch.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. And it was in the middle of January. It was dark.
Cold.
It's at Polar Park Brewing. They had a great event space upstairs. Okay. Actually, I think we borrowed a bunch of the equipment, like the projector from GTV Optics. Tim actually bought pitchers because the bar didn't have pitchers to pour pitchers of beer.
The bar didn't?
The bar did not. So
no, they were like, we can pour just glasses.
Everyone
really fast.
showed up promptly at 5 p.m. and immediately there was like a line out the door at the bar. And then Tim and Brad ran over across the street to Dollarama, bought some pitchers, started pouring pitchers. And then we got the event started, and the investors sat in the front, I think. We had some chairs. Actually, I remember this. We had some chairs for the investors, and then Tim and some other organizers were like, guys, let's not get chairs for anyone else. They can just stand. Let's keep this event cheap.
Yeah.
So everyone else just had to stand. It was kind of like a rock concert. You're just standing and listening along.
What about the logistics leading up to, like, how'd you fund it? How did you guys get everything together?
We were having these weekly volunteer meeting calls because we only got funding to pay for some of the things, like the beer was free. So we got funding to pay for drinks and food at the event and the venue. But we just had volunteer horsepower to organize everything, right? Yeah. That's why we didn't get chairs.
That's right. Well, that, and because like if it's chairs, it's kind of lame. Like the energy is muted. Like people are sitting down, and it's no fun. And so stand, you hang out, you mill about. People were chatting in the room, like while the pitches were happening. Like there's sort of a some angles like, well, everybody should be quiet and like paying attention, and other vibes like, oh, you should be chatting with your friend about what is going on or whatever. So.
And I think there was some electricity to it because at that time in Edmonton, there hadn't been a pitch night like this in a very long time. And there was a lot of confusion about what was going to be happening in the community because the different economic development agencies were undergoing restructuring.
Right.
So then this event happened. Everyone kind of got really excited about it.
I'm assuming the attendance was much higher than you had initially thought then.
You know what? We didn't take attendance, but let's just call it 500 people. No, 100, 120 or something?
Yeah. And in terms of your pitch nights now, or your big events now, how many people do you have coming to those?
Directionally similar, 150, 120,
150.
And that's a good size.
Yeah. Honestly, once you get over 200 people, you need a different venue. It actually gets hard to organize the event.
And I'm assuming the night went exactly as you guys had planned.
So I think our favorite, so it's these pitches, and we were like, oh, we should probably record these. And so one of the guys was who we subsequently hired, tossed up a tripod with his phone and started recording them, and we have them on a Dropbox somewhere.
Yeah. And also, we didn't plan a lot of things. It just so happened that one of our founders was a world-class photographer, a very autistic photographer. And he just showed up with his photography gear and just started taking photos. And then just sent me a link after the event to say, hey, here's some photos that I took. And they're mind-boggling good photos.
Crazy.
Things just happen. If you show up without any preparation, people are I can do some stuff.
No expectations. Yeah. Everything will be much better.
Yeah. It's community.
Hard to replicate that over and over again, but it worked out that time. Yeah.
In the startup world, everything can feel very transactional. You're dealing with investors, with numbers, with projections, very technical math. That's right up Tim's alley. But both of them really want to take a different approach. And their happy hours and summits, definitely exudes that different approach they want to take.
I mean, for them, it's about building that sense of community first, and the money and deals follow. Honestly, it's a radically different approach to investing, but one that makes a real difference. And it breaks down barriers, levels the playing field, also brings new people into the conversation. So tell me about Startup TNT as an organization. How many people work for Startup TNT all in?
12 people.
Yep.
Scattered.
Does that include you two?
Yeah. Scattered. About half in Edmonton and half in the different regions where we operate. Yeah, which include Calgary, Saskatchewan,
BC. And our marketing person's in Ontario.
Oh, okay. But you're not in Ontario yet.
Well, she is, but no.
Yes. Not as your events and stuff.
Correct.
And so how are you funded? I mean, because we talked about how the startups are funded, but how do you operate as a company?
Well, we made a decision to incorporate as a not-for-profit because we really view the community building aspect critical, and running an angel investing network should be focused on helping the angels make investments, not making profit off those investments in a small kind of angel transaction. But then all the work that we do in the community is really positioned as an economic development engine. So we get quite a bit of grant funding.
Okay.
And then we get sponsorships, and we get some program fee funding as well, or revenue.
From the investors.
From the investors. The investors do pay a program fee.
And you have different scales of kind of organizations that support you. Notice that you have different names for them each. What are the different levels?
Yeah, there are different levels of friendship. So our philosophy from the beginning has been have fun, make friends, build companies, kind of in that order. Building a startup should be about building relationships with people and enjoying life. So we position the partnerships or the sponsorships as friend levels as well.
Yeah, instead of platinum, gold, silver, whatever. It was actually from the original
beer sponsors.
Yeah. So Zack had, trying to make it like a house party, trying to make it like just a happy hour with your friends. You should just buy your friends a beer, buy your friends some food or whatever. And so there was tiers, and one of them was Friends with Benefits, which was $100 for a round of beers and a pizza, because there was Royal Pizza across the street.
Beer plus pizza. Friends
Beer
with
plus
benefits.
Friends
pizza.
with Benefits.
Ah.
I think I was the first Friends with
Pizza
Benefits.
was the
This was
benefit?
he whipped out a $100 bill the day that I met him to be our first Friends with Benefits sponsor.
Oh.
Mostly because it was funny, but also because why not beer and pizza? But yeah, that just continued, and so there was like the argument, oh, we should have like different tiers of sponsorship and whatever. And we were like, oh, it's just friends. We needed to get rid of the Friends with Benefits sponsor. I don't think anybody would have been particularly.
Yeah.
Government particularly
really- yeah, I
don't
not open to that.
Yeah.
But the levels are still based on friendships, close friends, best friends forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
That explains the best friends forever. I love that so much. I mean, that in and of itself is different. I don't think I've ever heard anything like that before. And it speaks to your personalities and keeping it fun. I like that fun is a core part of what you do. Yes, you're helping do business, but why can't it be fun at the same time, right?
Yeah, and also if it feels too corporate, it's not super genuine, and so like a lot of it is introduced. Like, I mean, we're making investments into great startups, and then those startups often go from being sort of hacky garage sort of put together things into needing to do reporting to investors, and then now they need insurance and legal and banking and all of the stuff that goes associated with raising like a few $1 million. And so, you know, the sponsors want to be in front of a whole bunch of these companies. They don't really know who to be speaking with. But if we're sort of a friendly, trusted person around the table, they're like, oh, this is also our friend. You should be introduced to, you know, Angelo at MNP. He's a great guy. He's one of our friends. We think that you would like him as well. It's a bit of a different angle than like, hey, this is MNP. They're our gold sponsor.
One thing that really stood out during the interview was how they talked about Startup TNT being a major economic driver for the city of, well, for all the cities that they operate in now. From a startup perspective, these numbers are quite significant. The impact goes beyond just economics. It really opens up opportunities for people from all types of backgrounds to really participate in the startup community.
I'm going to ask you to, from your brains, just pull out some stats for me. Give me some examples of the economic, because you talked about, you know, you're also doing economic development essentially. So what's some of the economic impact that Startup TNT's made since you've existed?
So I think we've got about 16 million that we've invested into about 108 companies or something like that over the last 5 years. We're running right now at just shy of about 4 million a year. We'll see how we end up in 2024. But yeah, about 500 investors, probably about over 400 were angel investing for the first time with us. And so from the perspective of getting angel money, or we'll call it just investor money off of the proverbial sidelines of folks who have made money in other industries but are now looking to invest for the first time into the entrepreneurial tech ecosystem. Yeah, that's a lot of what we do. And I don't know, I think you know more about the sort of like revenue and jobs and those types of numbers.
The portfolio has gone on to raise like another probably close to $100 million beyond just Startup TNT investors. So that's like a massive attraction of capital to the different communities we operate in. And just here in Edmonton, our portfolio has created 150 jobs since we invested.
Those are really great. Did you set metrics when you started? Like, did you
We had
think
to
we
make
wanna
up.
do?
I mean, we had to make up metrics in order
Yeah.
to get grants. But the thing that we wanted to do was invest in great companies.
Yeah. We did have like some sort of investment metrics that we would think about and we still think about in terms of like our own, like what is a positive outcome.
Mhm.
And that's like the sort of hard to define quality of the network that we have, the number and the amount of money that we're, or the number of deals and the amount of money we're raising for those deals, and then the overall return on those deals. But that, like the return on those deals, that's like a 10-year metric.
Yeah.
So I think actually like the job creation numbers and all these things are actually really important to just kind of show like,
This is a real tangible
before you get your
impact.
money back as an investor, look at the impact you're having on your local economy,
Yes. Yeah.
or as a funder and a sponsor.
Well, and more grants. Oh, I think that the hope is that that's also why they're doing it, right? You're getting them off the sidelines to invest in their own community and in their own neighbors and people. And so, yes, it's about the return, but it's also about something you can do to help keep jobs, keep companies in your own community. Because we also do hear a lot about startups maybe that get venture backed or are invested in that get pulled out of the community too.
Totally.
Was that a driver for you guys?
And they go live on air mattresses in nursing homes.
Well,
It was just you.
No, that actually is part of our philosophy around like how do we ensure that great founders can build a great company right here in their own town and not get pulled to other cities. Like, like sometimes Tim and I think about it in different ways, but I think about it in like, if you want a great community where you live, like you got to go do that yourself. You can't rely on other people to kind of move in here or figure it out. Or if you don't think your community is great, go move somewhere else. Like if you want to live in a great community, you have to be that great community. So that's like a big part of my philosophy for sure.
I mean, one of the things as well is that if the local community isn't investing in you as a startup, it's really hard to then raise from other people. For example, if some startup comes and talks to us from like Toronto, not that we invest in Toronto right now, but if somebody was coming and being like, well, because we invest local. But if somebody's coming and talking to me like, well, why are you raising from me? Like, why are you talking to some dude in Edmonton? You're from Toronto. There's a bunch of investors there. Why aren't you able to raise there? Or even Calgary or Vancouver or Saskatoon. Like, what have you got from local traction that suggests to me that you actually got your stuff together? And so that's part of it as well, is to be able to provide that local legitimacy that the startups need in order to raise from people who are not here, which then makes it easier for them to raise elsewhere, which makes it easier for them to stay here, because otherwise they move there in search of funding and stuff like that. So
I also imagine that your model, it has an inclusion element to it as well, because you always hear about, if you're, starting a business, go to your friends and family. Well, what if you don't have any friends or family? And legitimately, some people don't have people in their lives that they can go to ask for $5,000 or $20,000, and they can't qualify for a loan, but they have a great idea or could be a great business owner. And so maybe they're from certain equity deserving groups, and this gives them access to that, to build that network. So
yeah, 100%. Friends and family round is like one of those hurdles you have to cross to be an entrepreneur. But yeah, if you're not a more senior person that's already made some money or have wealthy friends, it's hard to do that friends and family round.
yeah, or I mean, if your friends and family aren't terribly sophisticated from the like, even if they have money, they might not be sophisticated in business, and they might not be willing to part with it, because who knows? Like, is this real? Like, could this be good or not?
there's
And so
a
to
risk
have
tolerance too.
yeah, totally. And so to be able to have an outside group that says that, yeah, seems like it's worth taking a quick bet on, like it seems like it's worth it, is useful. But to that point, like, we don't have a lot of folks, when you're thinking about raising venture, the argument is, oh, you need to have like a warm intro in order to be able to get in the door, in order to have a good conversation, because otherwise it's just, you can't cold email these people because they get so many reach outs and whatever. But our entire process, the investment summit process, is literally, it's a Google form on a website, and people just toss in their application. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't, like, we can be on a first name basis, and I could have never met them before. Same process. It's a cold application on the website. And so as a result, and then we also, because it's a group of say 25 investors, but it's small groups going and talking to the entrepreneurs and then coming back and pitching the rest of the group. What ends up happening is most of the group is blind as to who that individual is, like as a male, female, Asian, white, black, doesn't matter. Like, that's not a conversation. We're just talking about what the business is, what the metrics are, what the market is, and that type of stuff. And as a result, the diversity metrics are kind of through the roof. So we got, I think maybe
like close to 40% of the deals have at least one female founder, and I think about 25% have a person of color or Black Indigenous founder.
Yeah.
Which is actually really good metrics for like the venture community in general.
Yeah, there's folks who do it intentionally and don't get those metrics, and we're just like, I don't know, we just invest in good companies. That's whoever, just local people.
But you've taken unconscious bias out of the equation,
yeah,
right? And then they are truly just looking at the company and the idea, the business case, right? And not the person.
That first Angel Forum that you were at, the process is to put the entrepreneur on a stage and sort of make them, it's like Dance Monkey, and then everybody gets to see who it is.
You have to be good at public speaking too,
totally.
Right? And not everybody is.
Especially
doesn't mean they're a bad business owner.
Yeah, and especially in Edmonton, where it's a lot of technical forward founders, like technology that's being spun out of the university. People, I mean, I think
deals really around the edges.
I think Mike would be okay with saying, like, Drug Bank, the first winner of our first investment summit, they were on stage. The pitch was super rough. Like, it wasn't super polished. He's not really a sales guy at the time. He's gotten a lot better at public speaking since. But
he was actually working on his public speaking skills.
That's right. And he knew, he was like, that wasn't a great pitch. And we're like, well, it's not really.
Diligence is going really well, though. Diligence is going really well.
Consolation beer.
Yeah. It's not a pitch competition. It's a deal screening process. So.
Coincidentally, one of our other Dare to Be Different features was a benefactor of Startup TNT's efforts to boost startup development in Edmonton. In fact, I think one of the very first ever to pitch at Startup TNT. So we talked to the founders of FutureFields, Matt and Jeline, about how they've benefited from the Startup TNT ecosystem.
Startup TNT was one of the first groups to take us seriously, I think, and to believe in us. So they have definitely been a big part of our story here in Edmonton.
Yeah, we're huge fans of them, what they've done for us, what they do for the community and continue to do. I think they're a big reason for why the startup ecosystem in Edmonton is what it is today and how it's grown over the last 5 years. Yeah, they were one of our earliest supporters. We were in their first investment summit at the time. What was a very impactful investment from them, and these days, like, we'd spend that money in a week, but at the time it was like it moved the needle
Yeah,
a
it
lot
let
for
us hire our first employee, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. First,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was a very big deal at the time.
Well, so that funding gave us the money to hire another employee,
Yeah.
but we also found our first employee
at
a Startup TNT event,
Mhm.
who has now gone on to be a big part of the company. He's our
Yeah.
VP of sales,
Yeah.
and so it's
Yeah.
impacted us in more ways than one. And I don't know, we're the biggest fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about kind of the future. What's next for Startup TNT, and where do you guys see this going?
I'd say two things. Like, we want to be doing this in communities all across Canada and then all across the world. And we want to have more money going into those communities through venture capital funds that we raise and run to activate even more money.
Part of the secret is that, like I was saying earlier, friends and family can invest sort of this like few $100,000, and venture capital has walked down a little bit. They'll write sort of like $250,000 checks, and they're starting to fill out seed rounds like this $1 million or $2 million raise size. But generally, people like to invest later because, all else being equal, you make money as a venture capitalist. You make money off of how much money you manage. So small checks means you make small money, and so everybody sort of moves up market. And so there's a prevailing thought in the venture community, and this is just a function of how the venture firms are built, is you can only, you have a fund, you divide it by however many checks or how many investments you want to make, and so that's your check size. And so everybody graduates up market. But our thinking is, well, if we distribute the decision making down to the communities, you can actually build a fund that's quite large from a dollar perspective, and instead of slicing it up and dividing it by like 20 or 40 companies, you divide it by what the size of check is, 50,000 or 100, 150, 200,000 into the companies that the communities decide. And then you can have a much larger fund. You can have, hundreds of companies in the portfolio because it's distributed from a management perspective. And that's sort of the unlock from the perspective of how we run this thing sustainably going forward. We've raised our first fund. It's top decile performance so far. And we're looking forward to what comes next on that side too.
Yeah, I've actually been pretty impressed over the last couple of weeks, actually, with some of the reporting from our founders, where it's been a tough time out there for the last year and a half for a lot of companies, but I think we're turning a corner right now. We got a lot of good news coming our way from our founders right now in terms of traction, raising new rounds, just general excitement and momentum.
Do you see your guys' role in Startup TNT shifting as it continues to grow, or do you want to really stay on the ground? Front lines.
I think if you talk to our team, they'll let you know just how bad we are at managing a company.
So they want you out of that role.
Yeah, and we want to not be doing it either. Like, I don't think we grew up wanting to be people managers.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's necessarily something that we're super great at. Like, having somebody who knows how to build an organization, how to take it to that next level, how to build and steward a team, I think is a skill that, it can be learned on the fly, and we're trying to figure it out as we go, but it's also not the best look for the organization to be figuring it out on the fly. So helpful to have somebody who knows what they're doing.
You talked a bit about like your first fund, you've raised money for that. Do you have any ambitions to be full on like fund managers?
Yeah, that would be ideally the path that we go down. There's sort of somebody who's running, call it the not-for-profit or the operations or the decision-making from the community, like building the communities so that then they make investment decisions on which companies we're investing in on the first check, we'll call it. And then we want to be working on the venture capital fund that attracts the institutional capital or family office money to build a fund, to invest in the companies that the communities decide, and then make decisions as to which of those companies get subsequent funding from that fund. And so then it's a venture capital fund that sits on top of the communities, or helps the communities, or sits alongside, or however you phrase it.
Yeah.
But it's sort of two separate things.
Right. But ultimately, like, your mission and your initial vision was to like have it community driven, right? Like that's the whole mission around this.
Yeah, community driven investing, and like what we do now and like what our bread and butter is community-driven angel investing, but there's an opportunity to also do community-driven venture capital investing.
Right.
And 10x the amount of capital that we're raising for these communities. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dare to Be Different, sponsored by M&P. We hope you enjoyed hearing about the Startup TNT story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this episode.
And the next time you have a crazy idea, don't ask why, just ask yourself, why not?